Senator Gravel, welcome back to Primo NUTMEG.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being back on the show, especially on such short notice. So I just wanted to clear up any kind of confusion about your campaign and what's happening at this point. I know that you were kept out of the debates. The DNC wasn't including you in polling, even though you met the donor requirement, you still, because you weren't being included in polls, thus did not poll at the requisite amount needed. So is it true that you are now dropping out of the 2020 presidential race?
Well, I'm not dropping out of the race. I'm dropping out as a candidate for myself. I still want to maintain my presence in the race by endorsing Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard. So I'll continue in that capacity. I believe that both campaigns will use me as a surrogate as time goes on here. So I'm very committed to them. There's nothing unusual about supporting two candidates when there's two offices open. One is for president, the other is vice president.
So when you say that you are endorsing both Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, are you supporting one for president and one for vice president, or are you supporting either one to be president or vice president?
Either one. In other words, let's see what happens in the polls, and let's see what happens in Iowa and New Hampshire, and clearly the field will narrow down, and we'll see how Tulsi and Bernie play out as the field narrows.
Okay. I guess this might be a little bit unusual, so some folks may not have quite understood. So just to clarify, you recorded two different videos, one saying that you were endorsing Bernie Sanders and one saying that you were endorsing Tulsi Gabbard because you would be happy with either one being president and either one being vice president.
Correct.
Okay. So in coming to this decision, was there any kind of deliberation about if maybe you should be picking one over the other, or you just felt that you should kind of split it evenly and support both?
Well, most of my supporters in my presidential candidate are very much pro-Bernie supporters. And at the beginning, when we first decided to let the kids run my campaign, we had agreed that at the end of the campaign, we'd be supporting Bernie. However, from the get-go, I was very impressed with Tulsi Gabbard. And I see her as a real coming powerhouse because of her charisma, her level-headedness, her courage in opposing the military-industrial complex. And so I'm supportive of her and Bernie. Bernie I supported and contributed to him the last time. We are taking the funds and contributing our funds to Bernie and to Tulsi equally. The law permits us to transfer $4,000 each, and we've done that, or we're doing it. And then in the course of the campaign, we can design ads in support of Bernie and in support of Tulsi. As long as we don't coordinate with them, we can then design these ads and then put these ads on at our expense. And so we ended the process with about $150,000 in the bank, and we have not spent it. The kids have been very parsimonious in this regard, and we've not had any great travel expenses. I have not traveled, so therefore we have this money available. Now it's a question of and I've asked the campaign managers to go ahead and think of the kind of campaign we could wage in support of Bernie, independent of Bernie, and Tulsi and independent of Tulsi. But we've transferred the maximum that we're permitted under the law, and that is $4,000 to each.
I understand. So just to be clear about how this started, you're saying that when David Oakes and Henry Williams first approached you to run, that it was always sort of agreed upon that Bernie Sanders would get your endorsement, but you're saying that Tulsi Gabbard has impressed you, so you also want to endorse her.
That's correct, and it was really agreed upon. That was a quid pro quo that we never assumed that I would win the presidency. So we decided at the very beginning that we would endorse Bernie, and we've done that. And like I say, I've developed, independent of my backers, these kids, the support of Tulsi Gabbard, who I think has great potential, and will eventually be, either this round or the next round, will eventually be president of the United States. She's that unusual. And of course, she comes from a religious family background. And so she had, as a child, certain views that she articulated that were not acceptable to the progressives. But she has since thrown off these views, has apologized for them, and is very much supportive of the progressive agenda. And I've just the other day read over on her platform all of the items. They're essentially the same items as Bernie Sanders endorses. So, from my point of view, ideologically speaking, I don't see much difference between Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi was the first one to take on the military-industrial complex. Bernie came to that after Tulsi. And so Tulsi had a better foreign policy than Bernie did initially, but Bernie has come around to her foreign policy, and that is to close most of the military bases that exist abroad and to cut down on regime change and sanctions. So, from my point of view, they're both the same. The ideal, in my case, would be one's president, one's vice president, and the vice versa.
That makes sense. I'm just curious too, because I know that you've spoken favorably of some other candidates in the race. Were you also considering maybe, endorsing other candidates? I mean, well, since you're at 2, why not, also endorse Marianne Williamson or Andrew Yang or Elizabeth Warren or whoever?
Well, I certainly admire Elizabeth Warren's positions on issues. That goes without saying. And then, of course, Marianne Williamson. I just have admired her in the past and admire her stance that she's taken at this point. Andrew Yang, I think, makes a credible choice. I really am opposed to what's his name, Joe Biden, who I know and I think is ideological, is horrible ideology, and of course I'm not a supporter at all of Buttigieg, who I feel is a bit of an empty shirt and would literally be a puppet for the military-industrial complex were he to get elected to high office. And he leaves the subject alone. If you can tell an empty shirt politically when they say a lot but don't say anything, as they say a lot and don't mean anything because they don't want to alienate people. And the military-industrial complex landed on Mayor Pete early on because he clearly would be a puppet for the military-industrial complex were he to get elected.
So I just, again, wanted to get some background because, as you mentioned, the teens run your Twitter account. And so earlier today, they put out the video of you endorsing Tulsi Gabbard. Was the video that I'm sorry, they put out the video of you endorsing Bernie Sanders, and that's on your Twitter page now, but not the one of you endorsing Tulsi Gabbard. Is the video of you endorsing Tulsi Gabbard the same as the video of you endorsing Bernie Sanders? Is there any difference?
Not perceptibly, but they'll be releasing that also. We've given the raw material over to the Gabbard staff, and as we gave the raw material over to the Bernie staff, and this was recorded at my home on Sunday, and so they're obviously releasing them at this point.
Okay. It just, there seemed to be a difference because your Twitter account put out the Bernie Sanders video, but I guess you handed off the video to Tulsi Gabbard's campaign to put out.
Well, the Tulsi campaign had not requested a video. Bernie did, and we had a video crew come over. And so while the crew was here, I took advantage to cut a endorsement of Tulsi, and they weren't aware of it until it was done. And then I made them aware of its existence, and we made every effort to get it to them early this morning or late last night.
I understand. So this video crew, they were from the Bernie Sanders campaign?
No, it's a video crew, Sky Whalen, who has been doing a lot of videography for us or for himself. He has a budget to do this and try and see if he can entice a major network to do a documentary on my candidacy. So this was the crew that has been to my home at least now 3 times.
Okay. So just another question on this subject, because there was an article that came out yesterday by Gideon Resnick in the Daily Beast saying that you were going to drop out and endorse Bernie Sanders. Have you seen that Daily Beast article?
No, I haven't.
Okay. There was a quote in there from David Oakes, and I just wanted to read it to you, or the segment of the report. It says, according to Oakes, Representative Tulsi Gabbard's campaign initially tried to seek Gravel's endorsement. Oakes said they tried to, quote, slowball the Gabbard campaign, but Gabbard eventually got in touch with Gravel. Ultimately, they thought it would be more beneficial for the Alaska Democrat to back Sanders, both because he has a better shot of winning the nomination and because of Gabbard's divisiveness among some on the left. Quote, we thought that a Bernie endorsement would be the best move, Oakes explained. We like Tulsi. Tulsi is better than the vast majority of candidates, but we know that Tulsi is most likely going to be dropping out in a few weeks, end quote. And it goes on to say that Gabbard has given no indication that she's going to drop out. Do you know why David Oakes may have been alluding to Tulsi Gabbard possibly dropping out?
No, I don't know the source of that. And the rest of David's statement is accurate, but that's not accurate. In fact, the Gabbard, Tulsi is going to be doing a military stint in her obligation on the end of September or thereabouts. And they've asked me if I would be a surrogate, and I said I would. And also, Bernie's people have asked me to be a surrogate, or I'm not sure if they asked me to be a surrogate, but if they do, I certainly would agree. So I really have no problems endorsing both and pushing both. I recognize that Bernie's ahead, and there's likelihood that he will get the nomination before Tulsi. But I would inveigh upon all of my influence to turn around and have Bernie, if he did get the nomination, to select Tulsi as his running mate. I think she would be the ideal in that regard, because I believe eventually she'll be president of the United States. She'll be the one to break the glass ceiling. I doubt that there's any other candidate, and there's quite a number of women running, but I doubt any one of those have the capacity to break the glass ceiling at this point in time.
I guess the reason why I'm focusing on it is it's, your campaign this year has been very novel. It's been very different. And you've always run very different campaigns, to be honest. But, I think that these teens brought a lot of energy and new techniques to running for president. But it was a different kind of campaign, right? Because you essentially handed over your name to these 2 teens to do as they would wish, essentially, and they ran on your behalf. And I kind of wonder sometimes how much disconnect there might be between your opinions, your views, and what gets put out on the Mike Gravel Twitter account. For example, I know that you have been outspoken about wanting a new investigation into 9/11. That has never come across on the Mike Gravel Twitter account. I know in the Vice news article that was, or news story, news video that was filmed, that this is a subject that was brought up. Do you feel as though they have been properly conveying your beliefs and thoughts about things?
Yes, I do. And of course, you can't expect that they would have 100% accuracy with respect to my views. There's probably some views that I have not shared with them. They've asked me all kinds of questions where I stood on various issues, and I gave them responses that seemed to be adequate for them. And of course, it was adequate. They were very accurate in the way they portrayed things. They also were accurate and in their misunderstanding of the 9/11 situation. I've explained that to them, but then they're not the only ones. I would say that 90% of the progressives don't really understand the problems involved with 9/11. All we're advocating is that there be a new commission to determine the accuracy of what was been reported by the American press and the American government. Now, that is not revolutionary. We just want more information because I personally feel it was an inside job, but I don't know who it was that did the inside job. And I have my suspicions, and a lot of other people who've looked into the details of 9/11 also recognize the need for a new commission. So that's all we're advocating, and that the young men who are running the campaign don't particularly understand that or subscribe to it is no big deal. Human beings will always have differences, but 95% or 98% of what they've put on is accurate and represents my views. And here again, it was their research of my views that brought this about. And what created the uniqueness is the fact that a couple of teenage kids would be managing a presidential campaign of a person with my background, and the fact that I turned over the communications aspect of the campaign, which of course is my Twitter account, for them to pursue. And the quid pro quo at the very beginning was that I would have veto power over what they were doing. And the only time that I exercised that by making comment over the fact that I thought there was too much frequency of the F word in the statements made. And of course, that was corrected immediately by them. So the whole undertaking has been extremely harmonious between the kids and myself. I can't tell you how much I admire their skills, their integrity, and their beliefs. And my only concern is, of course, they came up with the idea of having an institute. I'm not enamored of that. The question becomes who's going to run the institute. And they assumed that it would be easy to find another couple guys to do what they're doing. And I've shared with them that that's not easy at all. The uniqueness of what they've done, I don't think is particularly replicable. And why the campaign has received so much attention is obviously because it's so unique, where you have two teenagers that are running a campaign of a former presidential candidate and an existing presidential candidate, and doing it very, very adroitly and with gifted talent. So I want the kids to go back to school, finish their education, and then pursue a career based on the experience they've acquired. And we, of course, will keep up our contact ideologically and tactically while they're in school. David in Oxford and Henry at Columbia. And they'll be coming out to see me late probably August, early September. And then we'll do some planning as to what can be done in the next year prior to the convention and after the convention.
How many times have you met them in person?
I've never met physically David, because when Henry came out here with Church, I forget his first name in a moment, but they came out here and did some videography. We redid the spot on the rock in the water.
Right.
But David rather got sick and hospitalized for a couple of days, so he missed that meeting. But Henry and David and whoever they choose to bring out of the volunteers will have a meeting in late September, late August or early September, and plot over what we'll do and how we'll parcel out the monies that are left in the campaign so that we comply accurately with the law.
Yeah, I believe that there was a tweet put out at one point saying that the donations to your campaign would be going to the city of Flint, Michigan, because of the water crisis there. Do you know why that may have changed and why that may now be going to an institute?
That was a quick statement made by one of the kids earlier than that. We always had the get-go agreement that they would sit down with me and we would parcel out how we would use the monies. And so the Flint situation has changed from what it used to be. And so will make a donation to Flint, but the primary sums will be, as we've already divvied up, whatever we can legally with Hills, Tulsi, and Bernie. But the rest of the sums will be used probably for a campaign for both of those that we will wage independently. And then also, I'd be more prone to donate to communications areas, op-ed news, the Democracy Now, the Institute for Accuracy. So those are communications systems that are doing great work for democracy in improving the information level of people. And so I would be prone to support them with that. So that's what we'll do. We'll sit down, the three of us and whoever else chooses to come out, and we'll make a final decision on the distribution of what monies we have. And I would be prone to distribute all of it, not to hang on to any of it. That could just cause mischief down the road. And so I have a book coming out shortly in the next 2 months, and the proceeds from the book will be used to expand the visibility of the book. My hope is that it will become a bestseller, and thereby occasion a debate within the political science community about empowering the people to make laws.
Yeah, I hate to harp on this. I just, when we look at the arc of how this campaign has progressed, and you're saying from the beginning, these teens were asking you to end the campaign by endorsing Bernie Sanders, and just suggesting the Institute, which you have your concerns about. I mean, it just seems to set off a couple of alarms where I kind of wonder, are you concerned at all if they're really representing your best interests and what you really wanted to accomplish with this campaign?
No, not at all. I think that they could. I have no concerns in that regard. I think they've done a fantastic job, and I have told him repeatedly that we have a win-win situation. The fact that I did not get onto the debates is no big deal. I think what led up to the getting on the debates was a communications process whereby we were able to inform a lot of people about the issues that we care about, particularly in my case with respect to the creation and operation of a legislature of the people. And so that would not have happened had it not been for the initiative by these kids. And it's awesome that they have really maintained a level of integrity that's obviously visible to all, and I'm sure a great deal of people appreciate it.
But just to make absolutely clear one last time, you are endorsing Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard equally for president and or vice president of the United States?
Yes, with the proviso that I'm well aware of the fact that Bernie is ahead, considerably ahead in the polls, and so the decision as to which would wind up with the presidential nomination is open question. I think that the likelihood of Bernie getting it is very strong, but the likelihood of Tulsi advancing is also something that you will behold and be surprised by. Before Tulsi had endorsed Bernie in the 16 race,
right?
And of course,
she quit her job at the DNC to do that. Actually,
pardon me.
She quit her job as vice chair of the DNC, actually, in support of
in protest over the fact they were cheating Bernie. So that's no small accomplishment from her point of view. But before she decided to run this time, she had a meeting with Bernie, and I'm sure that meeting was amicable, and I'm sure that Bernie surges ahead, that Tulsi will endorse him. So what if she endorses Bernie? Let's say after New Hampshire, then obviously I would join with her in endorsing Bernie singly in that regard. So It's important to Tulsi's campaign to help her get the visibility and the credibility that her candidacy would need to project her as a likely candidate to be selected as vice president. So if you want to get a grip on what I'm doing, I'm trying to keep both of them in the forefront of the campaign, using what resources I have and what visibility I've acquired in this campaign. And so I would feel very comfortable with one or both holding the top two positions in the Democratic Party. And I sincerely believe that either one of them could beat the hell out of Trump.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's something pretty much everybody can agree on. So I did just want to ask also, because, in 2008, when you then ran as a Libertarian afterwards. I know that you said that you didn't run as a Green because you were supporting Cynthia McKinney. But personally, I have to say the Green Party nomination process now in 2020 is in quite a bit of disarray. Jill Stein is not running. There's many different Green Party candidates. Have you considered running for the Green Party's presidential nomination at all?
No, not at all. What's operative at this point is a statement I made to David Oakes when he asked me if I'd run. And I told him, I said, do you have any idea how old I am? And he says, well, it doesn't matter. It's the issues that count. And fine, as long as it's putting forth the issues that's of service. But there's no question I'm not qualified from an age point of view to be president. I don't think Bernie's problem, age-wise, will affect his candidacy, because obviously he's in good health and functioning on all fours. And with respect to Tulsi, though she's 38, she has exhibited a level of maturity that I've not seen in any other political candidate in the course of my whole existence.
Well, Senator Gravel, I really do appreciate you being back on the show and just helping clarify all of these things. For folks out there who, want to stay motivated about getting involved in politics, you've been around for a while. You've done many great things. You showed bravery by reading the Pentagon Papers into the public record and speaking truth to power in the 2008 election and running a very unique unique campaign this time. What would your general recommendation be for folks who want to get out there and make the world a better place?
Well, two things. One is certainly get out and vote this season, and I hope you would vote for Tulsi and also Bernie. And of course, for the general election, assuming both are candidates, that you would support them in beating Donald Trump. I think it's imperative that we do beat Donald Trump, but I don't think we need to give up our position as progressives to make that happen. If we put up a milquetoast centrist candidate, we won't beat Trump. Trump will eat that person alive. But if we have a serious candidate, like we have with Bernie Sanders and Tulsi, who both buy into the democratic socialism in comparison to Republican socialism, and that's really what the rhetoric has got to become. I've put out a release to Democrats to say that please make the continuous comparison between democratic socialism and Republican socialism, because otherwise you'll permit Trump to continue to make socialism a pejorative term, and it's not. And socialism only indicates that the government is used as a tool to make the aggregate decisions on behalf of the people. And so that's what the Republicans do with Republican socialism. And so when you make a comparison, it's very clear that democratic socialism is to benefit the people and Republican socialism is to benefit the 1%. And that's the comparison that needs to be made continually in the course of the campaign. Otherwise, you will cede the ground to Trump and his rhetoric. And Trump can be beaten. He'll probably beat himself with his idiotic positions. But be it as it may, we need to put forth a progressive leader that will, and of course, it doesn't make any sense when you say, well, we're for healthcare for all, but we can't go there for all. We've just got to go for a portion of it. That's ridiculous. The positions put out by Tulsi and Bernie are very clear, very straightforward, and need to be enacted into law if you're going to benefit the American people. And so making a compromise on what's right, I don't think is going to be a succeeding element in the presidential campaign.
Well, again, Senator Gravel, I really do appreciate you being on the show again. Hopefully I can have you back on, in the coming months just to get your thoughts on how the election is unfolding. But once again, I'd like to thank you for all that you've done for this country, most especially reading the Pentagon Papers into the public record, and for continuing to be a voice for truth and peace. And just thank you very much for all that you've done.
Thank you for having me.